Welcome to Our Town, a 30-minute podcast brought to you by Best Bark Communications, a small but fierce client-centered marketing company powered by decades of experience and well-established business networks.
This is Andy Ockershouse, and this is Our Town, and we're talking to a gentleman here who has made such an impact on our town, a fabulous impact, something I found for the first time when we researched John E. Akridge III, as known as Chip, is that he was not born in Washington, but we count you as a native now, Chip.
I don't think so. I think you got to have about 4 generations to be a native here, but at least I've been allowed to stay, so that's a good thing.
But one of the things I learned is that you picked Washington.
I did, and it was a total accident, as a matter of fact. It's after I got back from Vietnam. Sally and I were traveling around the country looking for a job, and I knew what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to be in the commercial real estate business. And I was going to the big markets, and we went to Boston, which we liked, New York, which we liked, and we were on our way to Atlanta, which is where I went to undergraduate school, and we really liked Atlanta. But it's a long drive from New York to Atlanta, so Sally had a relative that lived in Reston, and we begged a bedroom from him to spend the night. And while we were having dinner, the guy says to me, he says, the guy working for us is starting to build an office building, and he doesn't really have anybody on staff that knows anything about building buildings, and you may want to go talk to him. And I said, well, who would that be? And he said, Bob Gladstone. And so I went to see Bob, and he had a whole bunch of economists and feasibility study folks, but
Gladstone was a huge name.
It was a huge, well, it still is a huge name.
Absolutely.
But he was starting his first building, 2030 M Street, which he decided, after telling so many people around the country how to build buildings, or they ought to build buildings, that he ought to build one himself and take part of that. And so he said, I think you ought to think about working for me. And I said, well, I don't really know much about this market area, because I'm really you can go to a place that's got a real active.
You're still looking, correct?
Real estate market. No, actually, I started doing some research, and I saw a very interesting history of Washington. That is that the office market had a very steady 3% a year growth for about 25 years. No busts, no booms, which is unusual in this cyclical business. And I said, geez, that's the kind of market where you can take some risk and maybe not
look steady.
Not run over by the train. And so I ended up taking the job with Bob, and started in 1972, and worked for him for a couple of years. And during that time, found out that the federal government stopped leasing office space, which had been the total driver of leasing activity for those 25 years. They didn't lease another square inch of office space for about 10 years. But some good things happened to Washington, and the office market eventually took off. And I left him in 1974 with great foresight, just before the last Great Depression hit. Timing's everything.
Absolutely.
And so I was a brand new, wet behind the ears real estate developer trying to get started in 1974, and the prime went to 21, and Continental Illinois Bank failed, and all kinds of bad things happened.
Those were the days.
Those were the days, my friend.
You survived.
Well, the best.
You chose Washington, though, as a place where you would hang your shingle, or if you were a lawyer.
My grandpappy told me early on, Chip, take luck over skill every time. And I've just been one of the luckiest guys that ever walked this earth.
Timing
is everything.
Well, where did the name Chip come? Is that a family name, or are you the Chip off the old block?
I'm a Chip off the old block.
Okay, I like that.
I'm a Johnny Akridge III. My son is Johnny Akridge IV, and the first of 4 to be called John. Everybody else had some kind of nickname. And his oldest son is John V, so we've kept the name going.
The name Akridge is so familiar around Washington. It means so much to us and to our town and to our people. But to looking back on your life, I found out that you were not born in Washington as it came up. You were born in Nashville, Tennessee. Is that your family's Tennessee?
Knoxville, Tennessee, actually.
Knoxville, okay.
Yep. That's where I was born and raised. I stayed there until I left to go to college in Atlanta. You
didn't go to UT then, huh?
No. My dad knew the sheriff. That was not a good idea. So I went somewhere else. I wanted to go to engineering school, and
you crossed the border and went to Georgia Tech.
Yeah.
In Atlanta.
Yeah.
And that started you in the engineering world. Were you always inclined to be in that building?
I actually started working in real estate when I was 12, cutting grass for a large developer in East Tennessee, whose name is Guilford Glacier, who died last year, as a matter of fact. But he gave me a job. My mother had been working with him, and I continued to work for him through the 4 years at Georgia Tech. I was owner's rep on a building, 150,000 square foot building he built down there. And that's where I really honed my interest in real estate, and I stuck with it.
To get started, which was Atlanta, Georgia Tech.
Yep. Yep.
And you went to school. Now, tell me about your military service. You mentioned Vietnam, but were you in the Army, Navy?
At Georgia Tech, when I entered as a freshman, it was a land grant college, and ROTC was required.
Right, so you were right. It was necessary.
So I was ROTC in 2006. That requirement was dropped, and no, not 2006, 1966. That requirement was dropped, so I dropped ROTC. And my dad calls me up the next day and said, "Chip, thank God you're in ROTC." I said, "Why, Dad?" He said, "You got drafted last night."
They got the notice. Bad timing again, Chip.
Well, I went back to the commandant and I said, "Commandant, I got a problem." He said, "What's that, son?" I said, "Well, I got drafted last night because I dropped this course." He said, "Oh, no, you didn't drop this course. You should write in this course. You just
wonderful.
You come to class." So I graduated in ROTC as an Army officer.
So you went into to be an Army officer right out of ROTC.
Right. Yeah.
But you had a good basic training with ROTC.
Oh yeah. I mean, ROTC is a good program.
It's still alive in most of the land grant colleges. It's necessary, correct?
It's not necessary anymore, but it is alive and well, and there are a lot of folks who do participate in ROTC.
Well, a friend of mine was just down to watch a football game at Texas A&M. He said they're still all in uniform. Half of the stands were in uniform. They were still playing the 12th man role.
Yep.
So for Tech, where did you go in Vietnam? Were you in the? But the timing then, the Vietnam was not as intense, was it?
Well, it wasn't. I got a delay of active duty in '68, which is when I would have gone on active duty, which it was pretty intense in '68, '69. So I got a delay of active duty and was lucky enough to get into Harvard Business School. Spent 2 years there, and the day I graduated from day after I graduated from Harvard Business School, I got my orders to show up for active duty, report for active duty, which I did, and 9 months later I was in Vietnam. So
you were prime.
Yeah,
they had you already.
Yes, they did.
Now, Chip, talking about Harvard, I want to hear that story because it's in your resume and in your life about how you got into the Harvard. Was it Harvard Business School, of course,
it
right?
Was Harvard Business School, yes.
A 2-year course.
Yes.
And they were not excited to have you at first. You were not going to qualify.
Well, I had a big deficiency on my application, and that was my grades that I made at Georgia Tech were not exactly Harvard material. But I had other things to speak to me. I was president of my class for 3 years. I did a whole lot of things, student activities and student government and that kind of stuff. But in doing that, there are only so many hours in a day, and I chose to do that as opposed to study. And that's kind of the way I
and not an unusual story, Chip.
But I realized I had a pretty big hole in my resume, and so I called up the dean of admissions office, and I said, "Can I talk to the dean of admissions?" And she said, "Well, probably not. Why do you want to talk to him?" I said, "Well, I'd like to make an appointment to come in for an interview." And she said, "Oh, well, that's easy because we don't give interviews." I said, "Oh."
Yeah, that's easy for her, right?
I said, "That's good. What's your name?" She said, "Mary." I don't remember what it was really, but I said, "Fine." So next morning I climbed on a shuttle and I went to Boston, and I walked into her office and I said, "Hi, Mary."
Where were you living at the time? Not Atlanta?
Yeah, I was in Atlanta.
Okay.
I walked in and said, "Hi, I'm Chip Akridge." She said, I told you yesterday we don't give interviews." I said, "I know you told me that. But you see that chair right over there? I'm going to sit there until I get one."
That is a fantastic story. I hope you repeat to everybody that's trying to get ahead.
Well, I probably will get thrown in the doghouse if I do that, but anyway, that's what I did.
He came out and saw you, of course, sitting there.
He did. Well, she went in there and told him that I wasn't going to leave, and so it took about 20 minutes.
He knew you were persistent. That must have mean something, right?
We had about an hour interview, and I told him, I said, "I'm going to come to this place, and I'm going to do well here." So anyway,
and you did.
I did.
And you became a good student. No, you always were a good student. You didn't have the
well, the training at Georgia Tech was very good for the business school because it really taught young troopers how to work. I mean, really work hard, and that's what we did. We worked hard, and it paid off. So,
well, you're at Harvard, obviously you did. You're in there with the brains work, and you had one too. Well, I'll be right back. We're going to take a break here, Chip, and I'm digesting the story about. I tell young salespeople all the time, if they won't see you, it means you didn't stand in front of them. You got to wait. You got to get in some way.
Right.
See them. We'll be right back with Chip Akridge, John E. Akridge III. This is Our Town with Andy Ockershausen.
This is Sonny Jurgensen. Got a confession to make. I let my wife drag me to one of those Mike Collins estate planning seminars. Like I don't have enough on my plate with a certain football team. Actually, it wasn't too bad. In fact, we both learned a whole lot about how to protect our kids and grandkids down the road and to take care of ourselves right now. So if you get one of Mike's invitations in the mail, go. I'm glad I did. Get all the information and register online at MikeCollins.com. That's MikeCollins.com.
You're listening to Our Town with Andy Ockershausen. Brought to you by Best Bark Communications.
This is Andy Ockershausen. This is Our Town. We're talking to one of the bulwarks of our town, Chip Akridge. I told Chip, I said, I can't go anywhere anymore. I don't see your side. It used to be that way with other builders, but like Clark, used to see them all the time. Not as much as I used to, but Akridge, everywhere. Well, so you have made such a great impression on our town in your building business. And it has been started from scratch here. You started with bad times facing you, but you overcame them and now have been so successful in building.
Well, as I said earlier, my grandpappy told me take luck over skill every time. And starting at the bad times was probably the best thing that ever happened to me, really. Of all the things, is that I got to see firsthand what the downside of real estate was all about. And
nobody handed you anything.
No. And the downside of real estate, there's no prisoners taken. I mean, it's tough. And so we had a business concept that was a late 60s, early 70s concept, which was basically trying to see how little equity you could get in a deal from people that really weren't going to be around when the bad times hit. And so we changed that approach, and that was key to our success and why we've been in the building business now for 42 years. This is we've been through about 7 or 8 cycles, and we've been able to survive because we changed our building approach to have institutional partners with a lot of equity in every deal, from guys, investors that
good partners
had more money and had brains not to lose what they had, and so they would stick with you and they would help you when the hard times hit. And that's really been, I think, the key to our success. Well,
have you noticed the same the growth pattern that you noticed when you picked us? Thank God you picked our town. The same growth pattern in the building industry in Washington? It's pretty steady?
Well, it's been steady, although it's been dramatically changed in the last 4 or 5 years in the fact that...
That's interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah, we've changed from being totally commercial office city to hugely residential. I mean, I'd say 70% of the construction that's going on today is residential and retail to support that residential.
That's our town. That includes the suburbs and everything that concentrates on our Uncle Sam.
It does include the entire metro region, but
right.
It's particularly true in D.C.
Right.
I think until like 1980, the late 80s, there hadn't been a rental apartment building built in Washington, D.C. in 30 years. I mean, we had rent control.
Stagnant.
It was, well,
rent control.
When there wasn't any demand.
Right.
People didn't want to live in D.C. That's all changed now with people our age, with no children. They don't need the schools. They don't need the yard or the big wide streets for the kids to play on, the quiet neighborhoods. They don't like the traffic. They want to get in town where they've got all the amenities so they can walk to or take a short cab ride to. And they don't want to own a big piece of property. They don't want the responsibilities. And so as real estate developers, you build what the market wants. And what the market wants today, that we have one end, the empty nesters that are looking for a smaller building and a smaller house and less responsibilities. And then the other end of the spectrum, we have the millennials that are coming along that they don't want a big house. They can't afford a big house.
Correct.
They're looking for a smaller unit. They don't want to spend their time cutting grass or worry about those things. They're all about lifestyle. And so with those two demand drivers, it has...
5 years, at least is what you're saying. I've noticed it from tremendously in 5 years, but I go way back farther than that to see it. And you came up with this idea of the Woodies Act.
Yeah.
When I first heard that, I thought it was Wood and Lothrop.
It was. It was passed because of Woodward and Lothrop. I got my tongue tied there. Wanted to build in some public space, and there was no provision for that in D.C. ordinance. And we had a building that we had 2 lots on either side of a alley on 15th Street at K, and we looked at the Woodies Act and said that applies here. We meet all the criteria, and so we actually built the first building that was ever built under the Woodies Act. Maybe the only one, I don't know, but at least at that time it was the first one. So
I believe it.
Yeah.
Now, what is the other thing I see? And you're referring to downtown and what's happened. It's happened in the suburbs too. Yeah. But these add-ons now that they take a small plot of land and they go up. It becomes a 4 or 5-story building when it was only 1 or 2 before. That seems to be the 14th Street corridor and 15th Street.
And the reason for that is land prices. Land prices have gotten very high. Outrageous. And so you take one lot, you got 100% land cost in one building, right? One unit. You put 4 units, you got 25% of the land cost in each building. And the construction costs are a little higher, but not proportionate.
They're much more affordable, correct?
Yes, they are.
Now, are you involved with the mayor who's pressing all the time for this affordable care and, affordable housing, and she's picked out some areas and moved some things around, trying to do something to help with what do they call them, affordable housing?
Well, in my experience here, in my town, you're going to be doing something with my mayor, and so
our town.
It's our town, and we deal with the mayor. And yes, I think affordable housing is an important thing. Workforce housing is another important thing. We need to be able to house our workforce, and so those are important things.
Your impact in the city has been incredibly enormous, and I see. I count the cranes. When I see nothing but a sea of cranes, Chip, I know we're going places. Our town is going crazy.
We may be building, us developers are like sheep. We all get going the same way, and a little too fast, a little too hard, a little too far. We may be doing that right now in certain areas, but so far, demand has kept up with supply.
Well, I noticed the big $2 billion project on the wharf and things, and around the ballpark now has happened a little bit. So everything is very positive from what I see. Now, I hope it is financially positive, too.
So far it has been. Yes.
Well, great. So, and the banks are happy, and the builders are happy, and
I think
the public's happy.
I think everybody's tapping the brakes a little bit right now on the supply side, just to see how this turns out, to see what happens with our new administration. We won't get into that, but that's a big question mark
always
as we look down there. The best thing for us and for the real estate industry is just to have an election. Anytime you have an election, you have a whole bunch of people that don't have jobs, but they don't leave Washington.
Right.
So they stay.
And they stay.
You have a whole bunch of new people who come in.
And they're looking for jobs.
And they're looking for jobs and housing. And so those are good things. So
we're somewhat inflation-proof in that, and from the standpoint of changes in the market. Well, Chip, this is great, and all the things you have done is so important. But nothing more important than what you've done with the economic development, the Federal City Council. Is there any trade board that you're not on?
Yeah, I'm not on.
You stick it out all the time.
I'm not on many boards now, but I am chairman of the Trust for the National Mall, which is kind of the
greatest project in my lifetime.
Well, I thank you, and I'm looking to educate more people across the country that is a needed project. That the front yard of America is in bad shape and needs a lot of.
Oh my God, Chip!
A lot of help.
As a native Washingtonian, I'm third generation. I have pictures of my my grandfather swimming in the tidal basin. They had a beach there, right. And then the mall was there. I've told Janice a story, and I hope everybody remembers. I remember skating on the reflecting pool and falling in the water. It got so stiff, my legs were stiff, and because of the ice. Yeah. The ice, my trousers were stiff, and I couldn't walk.
Well, we
that
skated.
was the National Mall. I grew up with the National Mall. It was fabulous.
We skated on the pond in the Constitution Gardens with our children, which is a few years later, but we have done that as well.
But what you've done to the mall is such a legendary, and the future is very bright for what private people are helping you with. A lot of companies have stepped up on that.
We are beginning to gain traction in the private sector. I have to give and happy to give Congress credit. They've funded almost $150 million over the last 3 or 4 years. I don't know if you've noticed the main turf area between 3rd and 14th
Oh, yes.
Street. But
I
we've
see
completed that entirely.
New grass, I call it.
It's not only is it new grass, but it is grass that has a maintenance program with it and a use program that allows us to maintain it the way it looks now. So I'm very proud of that. But now the private sector is seeing that the federal government is stepping up to fill their part of the bargain. We're starting to get traction with the private sector.
It is the national mall. It's not the City of Washington mall.
It is America's front yard.
And
if anybody wants to learn more about it, they can go to nationalmall.org, O-R-G. And we have a website there which tells you a whole lot about things we're doing, what's going on the mall, and of course it gives you the opportunity to make a contribution, which we would appreciate.
Well, and you also had one of my very dear friend who left the Board of Trade to go with you, is Carolyn Cunningham.
Yes, she did.
Is she still with you?
She is not. She's decided to move on, and we have a new president, Catherine Townsend, who started in April, and we're back at work. So
well, good, because you hire good people. It makes it work, Chip. You've done that your whole career. Make you look good, don't they?
Yeah. It's all about good people. There's no question about that. Yeah.
Well, this has been Our Town, and we're still talking to Chip Akridge, and we'll be back and talking about his life on two shores, the Eastern Shore and the Western Shore. This is Our Town.
Hi, Tony Sybil here to tell everybody about our newest restaurant over off New York Avenue. It's called Ivy City Smokehouse, 1356 Oakey Street Northeast, right next to the Heck Company warehouse. It is terrific, and we have the only seafood smoker in the District of Columbia. So when you go to your grocery stores or your delis, ask for Ivy City products. 202-529-3300 or ivycitysmokehouse.com.
Our Town with Andy Ockershausen.
This is Andy Ockershausen, and this is Our Town. I'm speaking and talking and listening to a very dear, important person in the city, Chip Akridge, who I said he lives on both shore because I had the opportunity, a great opportunity, to visit Chip in his lodge, as I call it. It looked like a scene from out of Africa, his lodge on the Eastern Shore, and to know and find out how deeply he's invested in his life in the Chesapeake Bay and the Eastern Shore.
Yes, we are heavily invested there. We're really all about the land and the water, and I served time on the Chesapeake Bay Foundation Board and Nature Conservancy, and I'm big on conservation. I'm big on sustainability. I'm actually a LEED certified professional, and we apply those principles to our office buildings. We've built 2 LEED Platinum office buildings. We have 2 more on the drawing boards right now. We think green building pays, not costs, and so we use that all the time. But on the Eastern Shore, that's I grew up, as we said earlier, in East Tennessee. I was a Boy Scout, and I believe in no matter where you go, leave nothing but footprints, and clean up after yourself and take care of what God has given us. We only have one earth, and we're capable of destroying it, and I think that we need to be careful and try to avoid that.
Well, you've set such a high standard for the Eastern Shore. I've seen the things, and I've seen your land down there, what you conserve and what's going on, and it's a shame that more people don't understand how important the environment is and how important it is for our children and our grandchildren. But you do.
Well, I mean, it like I said, I grew up in the mountains of East Tennessee as a Boy Scout, and I learned to appreciate those things, and my family appreciated those things. And I think a lot of people just have not had the opportunity to enjoy the outdoors or to get to know what the outdoors is all about and what makes it tick. It's all about education.
Well, and then in your travels, in addition to being working on Eastern Shore, you've traveled extensively, and one of your favorite places to go is Africa.
It is.
And you have just recently been in Africa.
We have. I think this was our 6th trip to Africa. It is.
That's you and Sally?
Me and Sally. This time we took our grandchildren, which is
wow.
First time we've taken them. It was quite it was quite enjoyable to see through the eyes of children what nature is all about, and they had a wonderful time. It was a life-changing time. When we took our children, our youngest was 9, and it was life-changing for them. And
so you passed that on to your grandchildren.
They were smitten by the place. And if I call them up from when I leave here, say we're going to Africa tomorrow, they're ready. They're ready to go. But this trip was particularly special because of the grandchildren. And we stayed in Tanzania for the whole 2 weeks. We went 4 different places, but the first place we went was really the most fascinating to me anyway. And it was the area that the Hadsby tribe occupies. The Hadsbys are the oldest living DNA left on the planet.
Is that right?
That's right. They're hunter-gatherers. They don't farm. They don't herd. They live off of what God gives them every morning. Either they hunt it, or they dig it, or they pick it off a tree or a vine. They don't have houses. They have these little straw huts that they move around as the animals
nomadic.
Move around. They are nomadic, and they have no refrigeration. They have no modern conveniences, but they've lived that way for 50,000 years, and they're still.
And they thrive, I would understand.
They have thrived, although they're being pressured by encroachment by herders and farmers into their habitat, which is causing them to decrease in numbers. They're down to about 1,200 people now.
And is the government doing anything to help them, or is the African community standing up for them? Or? Actually,
Tanzania has recently set aside about 15,000 acres for their exclusive use. The only problem with that is that the Tanzanian government doesn't have the resources to actually enforce that prohibition.
They're poor.
So there are people encroaching on there, and the Hadsby people are so gentle. They really won't confront these trespassers. The Hadsby people are interesting. They have no hierarchy in the village. There's no leader. Everybody is equal. They share whatever they have equally amongst everybody.
They're the good and the bad they share, correct?
If we don't kill anything to eat today, nobody eats. They're very gentle. They're very friendly. They're the way we all ought to be, frankly.
The primary farming community?
They don't farm at all.
Oh, they don't?
They don't farm.
Nature, right from nature.
Whatever God gives them,
I got you.
That's what they take.
What did your grandchildren think of this? Now, this must have been revelation.
It was. I mean, it was. There happened to be 2 little Hadsby boys there who were the same age as my youngest grandchildren, 5 and 9, and they'd never seen a white boy before.
Wow.
And of course, my boys had never seen a Hadsby before,
right.
And they had no language between them. But they paired up, and they were like this for 2 full days, which was just incredible. The Hadsby
How long
boys,
were you there? 2 weeks?
No, we were there almost a week. The Hadsby boys taught my boys how to shoot a bow and arrow, and don't get around them if they have one, because they can hit you. and my boys taught them how to throw a baseball and catch it with a baseball glove, and a football. Which they'd never seen either one of those 3 things.
Oh my God!
It was neat to see them.
Must have been
together.
Great experience. When you took your children the first time, the parents of your grandchildren, were they their eyes opened by Africa?
Absolutely,
also?
Absolutely. They were totally smitten. It was just incredible. I had a 9-year-old that would sit in a Land Rover for 6 straight hours without talking, or getting up, or wanting to do, just watching the animals.
It's great. Isn't that great?
It was amazing. Yeah, it really was amazing.
Now, but you're invested in Africa as a outsider. Of course, you don't have any business dealings over there. You're strictly doing for life and showing your grandchildren what the world's about.
Right. We do no business there at all. No.
Well, you came back here to Washington, and thank God you did. And I'm so glad that we have Chip Akridge in our town. Now, what's in the future for the Akridge Company, other than keep doing what you've been doing?
Well, we have some exciting things actually on the drawing boards that some of them have been there for a while, but I think probably the most exciting thing we have is the Burnham Place project, which is the air rights over the rail yard at Union Station. And it's exciting for a number of reasons. One is that it's encouraged Amtrak to rethink what the rail yard of the 21st and 22nd century needs to look like, because this one was built back in the 18th century. and completely redesigned the track layouts to conform to what the new requirements are. The station handles over 25 million people a year. It wasn't built for that.
No, it's a huge project.
It's a huge problem in terms of the train station itself. So the railroad is going to be improved greatly. We're going to build about 3 million square feet of mixed-use development in the air rights
on top of it.
Above that, right, which will be residential, retail, office, and probably a hotel in there as well. So I'm excited about that. It's a long-range project. We've been working at it now for almost 10 years, and as my investment partner says, this is going to be a great project for your grandchildren.
And you have other builders, other people involved in this big project, or you can't do it all, obviously.
Well, we don't yet, but it's just us right now trying to get all the approvals and all the basic design done with Amtrak and MARTA and VRE and Metro, and I mean,
I don't envy you.
There are a lot of parties involved.
Oh my God, what a bureaucracy!
In this making soup, but basically everybody's starting to pull together, and we're making good progress.
That is so exciting. Of all the things I know about our town, I had not heard that, and I know a lot because I read. The Union Station is a jewel, I think. I mean, the whole idea of trains are here. We've got to use them.
Not only are they here, they're part of our future, and we got to design for them. They're making provisions for the fast train in the Northeast Corridor, which is a big undertaking, a big investment. But that's part of the future.
Well, Union Station had so much going for it, and I'm glad that they have it more than just a train station now. Because when I grew up in Northeast Washington, going to the train station was huge, complex, and it was so quiet, nothing going on. Now you've got restaurants and bars and all kind of action, which is what it was meant for the people.
Yep.
I'm glad to see that now. Now they're going to do the same thing with the railroads, with the tracks. Right. Correct?
They're going to upgrade them. That's correct. And as a matter of fact, I think it's next week or week after they're having a re-grand opening of the monumental train hall, which was damaged severely during the earthquake 3 or 4 years ago, and they just finished rehabbing it. It looks fabulous. It just looks fabulous.
Beautiful, beautiful building.
Yep.
Well, Chip, you've done so much for our town, and we thank you for making that one night stand in Ruston turn into a life.
I thank my God for the luck. That's what I think.
And for our town, and thank you for you and for all you do, and our best to Sally and I know that you're looking forward to get down there. This is the best time of the year, I think, on Eastern Shore. Yeah. In the fall, when the leaves change and
fall and spring. Those are the two best.
It's so special over there.
It is.
But thank you, Chip Akridge. You're a great man, and thank you for being on our town. And
well, Andy, thank you for inviting me to do this. I've certainly appreciated it.
A lot of people found out about you that we didn't know.
Okay.
Thank you, Chip.
Thank you.
This is Andy Akridge, and this is Our Town.
You've been listening to Our Town Season 1 with your host, Andy Ackershausen. New Our Town podcast episodes are released each Tuesday and Thursday. We welcome your comments and suggestions on how you like the show or who you'd like to hear from next. Catch us on Facebook at Our Town DC or visit our website at OurTownDC.com. Our special thanks to WMAL Radio in Washington, D.C. for hosting our podcasts.